Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys? I don't know your names. I'm sorry. I'm Sam.
I'm Tati. I'm Kaylee.
Tati, Tati and Kaylee. Nice to meet you both. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. We're very excited to talk to you today.
Good. I'm excited to talk to you too.
Amazing. So I'll just jump straight in. So We Were Promised Honey has been described as both painful and comforting, and the British theatre even described it as something really special. So without giving anything
hmm
away, obviously, in simple words, what can the audience expect from the show?
Mm. So, We Were Promised Honey is, I would call it an experimental storytelling show.
Mm.
It's a storytelling show. It's about the future, and it's about how do we it's about how do we continue moving forwards when we feel like the end has already been decided, the end of our collective story. And so the show is a story of the future, and it's telling the story of the future of the audience. So, what's going to happen to this audience in the years and the decades and the centuries and millennia after the end of the show? And it's in its structure, it's basically like a short story collection. So each chapter is a story. So one of them is there's a baby born in a lighthouse, and there's a CEO who thinks they've got the invention to save the world, and these are all stories that I tell involving the audience about the future. So there's a little bit of audience participation, but it's not big or stressful audience participation. It's pretty straightforward. Um, but I think what you can expect is a sort of interactive storytelling show about the future.
Nice. So how did this specific project come about for you? Is this your first like theatre experience? How has it come about? What's your kind of story into this?
No, I've been making work professionally for about 6, 7 years. So this is I will usually work under the company name Yes Yes No No, who's making this show, and this is our fourth production. Um, it's This came about because it came about. I suppose it originally came about because at the end of 2019, I did quite a lot of work on the Labour campaign back then. And when we lost that election, there was a sort of sense of deflation, a sense of kind of hope diminished, and from that, I wanted to make something about hope and despair and how we keep going in the face of a sense of overwhelming despair. And then over the years, that kind of brewed into this, and it was just something I was writing on my own first, and then the Soho Theatre gave it a bit of commissioning money, and then Payne's Plough came on board to put it into their roundabout space for Edinburgh, and then when it opened at Edinburgh, it was a real success. So everything's kind of come off the back of that. Really, this is really the beginning of its journey. Um, Even though we've already done a month of it in Edinburgh.
So what is the process for you like with writing and performing? Is it easier or harder doing both of those things together? And then also how did you get into both of those?
Oh, okay. Is it easy? Yeah, that's a good question. I also wrote my first kind of naturalistic play this year, which obviously I won't be performing in. That was a play I wrote, and what is the difference? I guess usually the work I make is often made collectively in rooms with other people, and so there's a lot of the in my previous shows have been quite ideas heavy, so it's been you have to kind of work out the ideas in discussion, and actually the text comes quite late and just sort of comes as a way of the text usually just emerges as a way of kind of doing the work that you've already worked out.
Mm.
But in the case of Honey and in the case of this show, they were really quite written objects. So it was a lot of just, I mean, but I have a lot of writer friends who are really good at, they can like sit down, they can write for hours, and I can't really do that. I write for like 20 minutes and then need a break and then another 20 minutes and a break. I'm like a stop starter. Um, but the nice thing about performing your own writing is that when you start to get up on its feet, that's that's sort of like the second half of the writing process, right? Because I start to perform it, and then I'm like, well, this doesn't work actually, and actually, I'm just going to try and improvise and see if I can discover a better turn of phrase there. In terms of how I got into it, I always knew I wanted to make theatre. I thought I wanted to be a theatre director for ages, and then in like 2016, I started. I grew up in Salisbury. Don't know if you know Salisbury or have been to Salisbury before. But Salisbury is a pretty small conservative town in southwest England, and I was very involved in the theatre there growing up. But you don't see very experimental, interesting work there for the most part. And it was only when I went to Soho Theatre and I watched artists like Kim Noble and companies like Made in China, as well as, companies who are only a bit older than me, people like Barrel Organ and Breach, that I was like, oh, there's this whole other world of stuff you can do, that isn't plays. And then I was like, oh, well, this is the kind of work I want to make, really. This is the kind of work I want to make. And compared to my other work, Honey is like definitely more mainstream, I guess you could say, than some of my other stuff. It's pretty straightforward, but it emerged out of a realization that there's this whole other kind of current of work happening in London.
So you mentioned about the audience participation a little bit. Obviously, we don't really give too much away, or
that's okay. We can give stuff away.
Don't go into it. And we want people to come and watch it. We want to know what is it hard to interact with audience, because you don't really know, I guess, what people are gonna say. I don't know if it's something where you speak to someone. How are you going to draw things out of people in the audience?
Well, I can tell you. So this show, my work previously has involved a lot of audience participation. I made a show called Five Encounters on a Site called Craigslist, and a show called Insert Slogan Here in 2017 and 2018, and that was big audience participation, which involved getting audience members on stage and inviting them to have quite in-depth interviews or conversations with me, usually about quite like deep or personal stuff. And that was like a really heavy thing that required a lot of prep, that was very stressful to do. And I had really had to develop my skills kind of as like an interviewer in order for that to work and to get people to feel comfortable and open up in front of an audience. This show, Honey, is different. The way that the conceit of this show, the way that this show works is that at the beginning of the show, I'm sat in the audience and I say to the audience, the show that we're about to do is a story of the future. The story we're going to tell is the story of us. I'm going to tell you this now, it doesn't have a happy end. And then I say to the audience, we can only begin, or we're only going to begin if someone in this room, one of you, says the words, I would like to begin. And only then will the story begin. So the audience are offered a choice at the beginning. You know your story is going to end badly. Do you want to choose to begin? And that's a real offer. If it's the case that no audience member says anything, we will just sit there in silence for the hour. So, and that's how a lot of the audience participation operates, right? So at the beginning of each chapter, I usually need an audience member to somehow be involved. And the way I get them to be involved is I say, look, we're going to do the next, obviously I say it more artfully in this, but I basically say, look, we're going to do the next bit in a minute, the next chapter. If we can just stop here, the story ends badly, so we can just stop here. But if you want to hear the next chapter, then we will need one audience member to volunteer to tell the next, to help me tell the next part. And when we landed on that as a way of inciting audience participation, it was a real revelation, because it's amazingly freeing as a performer, because usually when I do audience participation, you have to ask for a volunteer, and audience members sometimes don't want to put their hands up because yada yada yada. And there's a real gesture of me, the performer, needs you guys to volunteer in order for this thing to continue. Whereas it flips that, because this is saying, Sam, the performer, has basically got an attitude in the space of, look, it doesn't really bother me if we keep going with the story or not. I'm just telling you that if you want to hear the rest, one of you is going to have to volunteer. And then I can just sit back and let the audience, do the stress for me. So this is a really different operation going on here. So I'd say it's largely quite stress-free for the most part.
You're handing the torch over with the stress.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned, you're pre-warning the audience at the start that it doesn't have a happy ending. And interesting you bring that up, because one of our segments in our podcast, because we have a podcast, is talking about our favorite and least favorite tropes in shows, films, and stuff. So apart from the unhappy ending, what are some of your favorite tropes in theatre, film, TV, the full spectrum?
So my favorite tropes.
Yeah, whether that's to write or to watch.
Yeah.
Either or.
I can tell you, I don't know whether these things count as tropes, but things that I love that when I see them occur in TV and film, particularly in TV, is I love multiple storylines of characters who don't, multiple storylines of characters who don't even ever meet, running alongside each other. I love stuff that moves backwards and forwards, really, and Honey does. Honey actually does some of this stuff. I love stuff that spans huge millennia of time. I just finished watching Station 11, which I don't know if you saw, the TV show, which is incredible. One of the best things that's been on TV in a very, very long time. and that does a lot of that. Station 11. I also love just like, you know, I love the gang getting together. You know,
Yeah.
I love it when I like, you know, I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, but I appreciate the joy of like, you know, all the gang getting together.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate that.
Like a team quest. I love Goonies, like anything where it's like a group of people and they will have to like go off and do stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Are those tropes? I don't do they count as list of your tropes? What did you have as your favorite tropes?
Well, we have a lot of least favorites.
I think one of the favorite reoccurring ones is the struggling artist trope. I feel like you see it a lot.
Okay.
Struggling artist in New York, struggling artist in London. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorites, especially when they get to see their success in the end. So I don't know if you know Jonathan Larson, the musical legend. I'm obsessed with that whole musical theatre world, so that's why I love that trope.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We were talking to someone earlier about the sort of like open-ended trope. So when something leaves you questioning the end, and we always kind of go back and forth with whether it's like something we actually like. But from my point of view, I like a little bit of closure, but something that's going to make me think after. I don't like it when it's a complete, I have to figure everything out myself. I think I probably could enjoy that, but maybe not on a sit down and watch a movie. I don't need to be thinking about it for forever after. So partial closure and then leaves questions, probably my favorite tropes, or least favorite.
Partial closure leaves. There's a one of my favorite films. There's a film called Burning. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like a South Korean thriller.
No.
And if you like, I mean, that's barely like partial closure. That's like almost no closure at all. It's so good. It's like a mystery thriller where well, I don't want to give too much away, but where something happens and you just never really find out what actually happened because it's not really about that.
I will add it to my list. I have a long list of things that are worth my
Honestly, it's so good. It's really, really great film. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Let's go back to I promised honey. You could.
We Were Promised Honey.
The little.
I call it the short version is Honey, but its full name is We Were Promised Honey.
We Were Promised Honey. You said it's kind of like that. You deciding the fate of the audience ending, la la la. If we were, for you personally, because obviously it's about the audience, right? That's what we're coming to see it on 23rd, so we'll be there.
Yeah.
But if it's about you, what's your kind of ending that you would like to see for yourself? Like future after this, what is your future for yourself?
Oh wow, what's the future for myself? Do you know, I tend to be suspicious of like end goals or like positioning. You know, it's good to be determined and it's good to like, but I'm more like let's have goals for next year. Let's have goals for this year, you know? I just, you know, I find that, but you know, what I want to be doing is start writing for TV. That's something as a kind of goal to get into. And we've got some, you know, as a theatre maker, we've got some big shows. I mean, Honey is already doing. Honey, you know, after Soho, we're doing a tour next year, which takes us to places like New York, Hong Kong, Canada. Like we're really going everywhere, and so that. You know, next year is going to be busy in terms of this show. But we as a company have some like big. To be honest, I just want to keep making the shows I want to make. You know. And now I'm getting to a position now where venues trust me more. I can get more money, which means I'm able to say like, you know, I do want to make this show or that show, and you know that might not last. And so it's also good to have goal. I've got a list of books that I want to finish reading before I die. So it's you know, I try and keep my goals, things that I'm going to achieve if things go well. But it's nice to have goals which you're going to achieve if things don't go well as well.
Yeah.
You know?
So you see how in the play you give the audience a choice. So it's, you know, if you know it's going to end badly, but you know, say this if you want to continue. If you in your personal life were given a choice to find out what is going to happen in the future, would you take it or no?
It's a good question. Would I want to know what's going to happen in my life or in the whole world?
Both, either.
Yeah, both.
I think in the whole world I wouldn't, because that would be so frustrating, because I don't think things are going to go well. I don't think things are going to go well, and no one would believe me. And so I don't think it's not like I would be able to like use that knowledge to activate any change.
Yeah.
In terms of my life, I mean, I don't know. It could be useful. Like if I find out that I'm going to die if I step on that road at that time, then it would be useful to know not to do that. I guess.
No.
I guess it depends on like what metaphysics of time we're operating
Yeah.
under. You know, is it the case that I can't change it? Can I change it?
You're literally because I'm reading a book at the moment and I'm not far in at all, but the premise so far is that there's a cafe, and the cafe you enter, you can go back in time, but you can only go back in time to the cafe, and you can only meet people that were in the cafe. So I'm thinking, what's the point in going back? Because it also said something about how nothing you do in the past will impact your future. So
Right.
kind of the same, like, you know, if I could see the rest of my life, is that because I can change it, or is that that's going to happen no matter what, you're stuck?
Yeah.
It's kind of like I'd answer
Yeah.
for me, knowing if I could change it or not. So I don't know. It's all
I think if I couldn't change it, then I don't want to know the end. I think like our world is positioned such that we can already make some pretty bleak projections as to how things are going to turn out, and I don't need those projections to be cemented in any way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, very true.
I think probably.
So another thing we do on our podcast is just discuss our favorite films. So if you had 5 films or TV shows or theatre shows that you think people need to see before they die, what would they be? And I know that's very difficult because we've even said
that's a lot.
Yeah, because we know that answer would change every day. So just for today, what would that answer be today?
TV and film and theatre.
It
could just be
that's
one. It could be one of a mixture. Or,
I'm not going to include theatre because I think there'd be different reasons, and also there'd be different. I think I'm going to leave theatre off for a minute and just do films and TV. The 5 films and TV that I would want would be film Inherent Vice by Paul Thomas Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
I'd want that. That's film. That's just really. It's one of those films that's just very sticky and joyful and fun. And Joaquin Phoenix, I love. I'd have that. I would have a film called So Long My Son by a Chinese director whose name I can't remember, which came out in 2021, which is like a huge film about a family living over 50 years or something and is just a really moving, amazing film. I would probably take if I'm allowed all of a series, I'd probably take all of Twin Peaks.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot as well.
That's a lot as well. Obviously, the second season, I'd leave out quite a lot of, but the first season and the new season that came out, I'd take a lot of Twin Peaks. What am I on 3? I'd take Station 11, which I already mentioned, which was incredible. And then there's a lot of films that I love. I mean, there are some like big hitters, like Parasites could be a good option, like films which have a lot of like complexity in them that I can imagine getting a lot of rewatch value out of them. But then, actually, probably, what's it called? It's that Joaquin Phoenix film by that Scottish female film director, Lynn Ramsey, and the film is called wait, hang on. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna remember what this film is called. It's one of my favorite films. The name just gone out of my head. You Were Never Really Here.
Oh,
seen that film?
I feel like
I've definitely heard of
I've heard of that.
That's a sick film. This is such a good film. You Were Never Really Here is so good. Another Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, I know that. That's nice.
Great film.
Have you seen the Handmaiden?
Yeah.
That's
such a good film.
I love that film. Tatting, you need to watch it. I keep pushing this, but yeah.
Have you watched did you watch Decision to Leave? His film that's just come out.
The new one, right? I need to watch it. I haven't watched it.
Yeah. Dude, if you like Handmaiden, then I think you'll like Decision to Leave. Is like, it's not quite as like big, but it does the same thing of like you go a little bit and then it wrong foots you, and then you go a little bit and it wrong foots you again, and then it's Decision to Leave is great.
I love that. I've been meaning to watch it, and I saw a poster for it in the underground today as well, and I was like, I know I need to watch it. But you should. Yeah, you should join the club. Definitely. And I guess as well, actually, that's quite like chaptery, like you were saying, your theatre show is that's broken up into very distinct. I think it has like part 1, part 2, part 3 throughout. So
yes.
Well, we're looking forward to coming to see it.
We're so
thrilled to have you there. Yeah, Wednesday, isn't it? Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
That was great. Well, I'll see you there, I guess.
Yeah,
Soho
thanks for speaking
Theatre.
to us.
Thank you
No
so
problem
much.
at all, guys. No
Do you have
problem. I hope
anything
it's
else that
okay.
you want to share for other people? So like, where can they find you?
Yeah.
No, I mean the show. So the show We Were Promised Honey opens next week at the Soho Theatre for 2 weeks, and it will then be doing a big. So if you don't live in London, it's going to be doing a big tour all over the country, and then we'll be going to some international places as well. And then you can find. I mean, we can find us on Twitter at Yes Yes No No Theatre, and we have a website www.yesyesnono.org.
Nice. We'll put it all on the screen. We'll post it all.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Have a nice rest of your day.
You too. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. If you enjoyed, definitely make sure to check out the other interviews we have on this channel.
And make sure you check out our podcast as seen in on our other channel. Everything will be linked in the description below.